This is a video demonstration of the project of web-based application for the Deprivation of Liberty Safeguards application, as it says on the screen, for the MSc in Software Development at Queen's. My name is William John Urquhart. My student number is 40314024. The actual form itself, which is used for the Deprivation of Liberty Safeguards, was created by the under the Mental Capacity Act in order to safeguard vulnerable people who perhaps don't have capacity to make decisions for themselves and need to have these decisions made either by a care home or need to be protected in some way. It's a quite stringent legislation. This is a medical legal document, and it does go on for some 10 pages or so. It's related to patient details, their medical history, and also there's some racial profiling and whatnot, and people who are involved in the care. That might be a lasting power of attorney for health and welfare, or perhaps for finances as well. And also, if the individual is unfriended, they might have an IMCA, an independent advocate, appointed to look after them. So the idea was to get this form into a web-based format. The reason why is because notoriously it's poorly completed. It's handwritten, so it's illegible. It's photocopied upside down. There's a lot of person hours involved in actually looking after these forms. The form will go to someone called the best interest assessor, who will then, along with a doctor, a medical doctor, actually look at the circumstances around which the person's been deprived of their liberty and the best way forward for them in their best interest, as I say. So in order to start the whole process, I looked at the Form 1 and made a spreadsheet detailing all of the information that was required, being faithful to the initial form, looking at guidance that was available to the people who are completing it, and the options that are available and the sort of database types as well. The names here, patient name, patient date of birth, are going to be standardized throughout the project. So that would be within the HTML, into the PHP, and then also in the database itself. The initial design of the project essentially was just a big long form, just like the Form 1. We had a few drop down areas. There was a bit here to be able to attach a copy of the patient's care plan, which contains an awful lot of information, whether or not IMCO is necessary, advanced decisions. But actually filling all this in and then clicking submit, I was finding that if it didn't go, if there was an error somewhere, go, right, okay, we'll try and deal with that, come back and then have to fill in all this information again before we could click submit. And then, again, it's it was very difficult. So time consuming, shall we say. So there was an awful lot of information here. This is at a later stage in the development, and we're also looking at things like we got message feedback from the users. There's the profiling, application status, for example, whether it was pending or had been completed. Sort of feedback back to the users. Most of these boxes have in common submission ID, and that was a useful thing in order to bring it all together in terms of making one submission. Some of them, to get users associated with particular submissions, we had to create foreign keys in between the tables. If I move on to the next developmental aspect of it here, you can see that there's a little bit of window dressing. These little images have come up, and they don't really do an awful lot except provide something for the user to look at, but they are breaking the Form 1 down into sections, and these are reflected in the nav bar here at the top. And if we click on patient details, for example, all the images disappear, which was very useful whenever we're doing the looking at it on say an iPhone, because the image, you need to be scrolling for ages before you get past the images, and then you get to start filling in the actual form. So to make the images then hidden once the patient details button was clicked was very useful. We have an addition here is the person objecting to the deprivation of liberty, and that is like a triage process for the best interest assessors. And once they see that, they think, okay, we need to prioritize this case because potentially there could be a court case involved in it. Again, this is a medical legal document. All of the fields, or most of the fields here, have been pre-populated, and we have buttons to navigate through. And yeah, and that was that essentially. So we then click submit, and we get a little form that says, "Yep, you can go back to the form 1." But there was no means of logging the patient. I mean, anybody could have come along and filled in the details. One of the things that was developed here was this guidance leaflet, of which this is a copy. And it was just a PDF file, which just gives some more information to the user regarding how best to complete the form and why they're actually doing it. There's certainly according to the CQC, the Quality Commission, who investigate these things, there's a certain amount of ignorance in amongst the staff who are completing these. So a little bit of education does no harm in terms of what they're looking for in terms of patient capacity. And this thing called the acid test, which is the two main questions to ask if a DOLS is going to be requested. So if the person lacks capacity and these are true, then apply for DOLS essentially. So it breaks it down a little bit. There's a video demo here of to complete the web application, and then also just a series of steps of going through it and what they'll find if there's an error message and how to navigate from one page to the other, and then what the final submit screen will look like. This is the sort of final form essentially. And if, let's see, we'll log in as someone, there's a user, we get a welcome message, we still got all the same information across the top, but as opposed to someone who isn't logged in, we have a search feature to see which applications this care home has actually made. We can go back to the home screen, we can log out, and then when we logged out, so there's no one has actually logged in, it says please log in to submit an application. Lo and behold, the submit button is gone. With someone who isn't actually logged in, the fields are all still pre-populated, just to give them some sort of an idea of what is involved in terms of actually completing the form. We can see that there's one here hasn't been filled in, and there's an error message which is indicating to them which field hasn't been completed and where it is. So it's in the patient details section, and if we scroll down, then we see this little red dotted box around that area which needs to be completed yet. So if we go back to the login, we do have a forgot your password field here, which you can fill in and click reset. It'll then tell you that to check your email, and you'll get a reset link, which is done via a third-party API called SendGrid. You can register for a new account here, and we can also log in as the admin. Now, this drop-down menu won't be in production because we don't want people seeing who else would potentially be using it, but for the purposes of actually using the form, it was actually really useful. We've got things like the error log here, which was an excellent thing to have. We've got a to-do list, which gives me some ideas from the feedback based from the users, people who've been actually looking at it, whatever needed to be completed in it. And then a submissions count as well, and also a search box here to actually look through the patients and to search the database for which care homes were involved.